The youngest of the Philippine arts, film has evolved to become the most popular of all the art forms. Introduced only in 1897, films have ranged from silent movies to talkies, black and white to color, outpacing its predecessors by gaining public acceptance from one end of the country to the other. Its viewers come from all walks of life. Nationwide, there are more than 1,000 movie theaters. Early in the 1980s, it was estimated in Metro Manila alone there were around 2.5 million moviegoers. As an art form, it reflects the culture and the belief of the people it caters, and most times is the one who shapes their consciousness. Filipinos started making movies in 1919. However, it would be important to know that the film industry in the Philippines began through the initiative of foreign entrepreneurs. Two Swiss entrepreneurs introduced film shows in Manila as early as 1897, regaling audiences with documentary film slips showing recent events and natural calamities in Europe. Not only that, but the arrival of the silent films, along with American colonialism, in 1903 created a movie market. But these films were still novelties. They failed to hold the audience's attention because of their novelty and the fact that they were about foreigners. When two American entrepreneurs made a film in 1912 about Jose Rizal's execution, the sensation they made it clear that the Filipinos' need for material close to their hearts. This heralded the making of the first Filipino film. The credit of being the first Filipino to make a film goes to Jose Nepomuceno, whom historians dub as the father of Philippine movies. Nepomuceno's first film was based on a highly acclaimed musical play of that day, Dalagang Bukid, by Hermogenes Ilagan and Leon Ignacio. In those early years of filmmaking, enormous capital was needed to keep up with the Hollywood industry. Despite its weak points, Hollywood provided the film industry with examples that the early filmmakers followed. It is not surprising that many of those same genres set so many years ago still appear in contemporary Philippine films. But it was difficult to match Hollywood style in those days with a meager capital set aside for the developing film industry. Ironically, the same people who helped the film industry develop as a form of expression were the same ones who suppressed this expression.
May 15, taong 1893, isinilang ang tinaguriang ama ng pelikulang Pilipino na si Jose Nepomuceno. Si Nepomuceno ang kauna-unahang Pinoy na nakagawa ng first silent film sa Pilipinas. Ang nasabing pelikula na pinamagatang Dalagang Bukid ay tungkol sa isang batang flower vendor na pinilit na ipakasal ng kanyang mga magulang sa isang mayaman na matandang lalaki. Si Nepomuceno rin ang may gawa ng kauna-unahang Tagalog sound film na pinamagatang Ang Punyal na Ginto. Ang itinayo niyang photography store noong 1915 ay naging prominente sa lungsod ng Maynila. Ito ang nagbigay daan para maitayo naman niya ang isang film company na tinawag na Malayan Movies. Naging trademark ng kanyang mga pelikula ang tema tungkol sa kaugalian at tradisyon ng mga Pilipino. Kaya naman itinuturing na malaki ang ambag ng kanyang mga obra sa kultura at industriya ng pelikula sa Pilipinas. Sa kabila nito, wala umanong na-preserve na kahit isa sa mahigit na 400 pelikulang ginawa ni Nepomuceno. Si Nepomuceno ay pumanaw sa edad na 66 noong December 1, 1959.
Early film producers included wealthy Spaniards, American businessmen, and Filipino landlords and politicians. It is not surprising that pre-war Philippine movies were inhibited from expressing their views that might question the establishment and were encouraged instead to portray the love and reconciliation between members of different classes. Starting with Dalagang Bukid, early films dug into traditional theater forms for character types, twists, and turns in the plot, familiar themes, and conventions in acting. This set the trend of Philippine films based entirely on immensely popular dramas or zarzuelas. Besides providing ready materials, this device of using theater pieces ensured an already existing market. From the komedia of the zarzuela, the typical Filipino action movie was to develop. The line dividing the good and the bad in the komedia was religion, with the Christians being the good and the Moors representing the bad. In present movies, the line that divides the two is now law or class division. Another source of movie themes was Philippine literature. Francisco Baltazar and Jose Rizal, through the classics for which they were famous, have given the industry situations and character types that continue to this day to give meat to films, both great and mediocre. Finally, by the year 1930s, a few film artists and producers dared to stray from the guidelines and commented on socio-political issues, using contemporary or historical matter. Director, actor, writer, and producer Julian Manansala's film Patria Amore, or in English, Beloved Country, was almost suppressed because of its anti-Spanish sentiments. This earned him the honor of being dubbed as the father of nationalistic film. Its own share of movie audience and acclaim for local movie stars were signs that the movie industry from the year 1919 to the 1930s had succeeded. Despite the competition from Hollywood, the film industry thrived and flourished. When the 1930s came to a close, it was clear that moviegoing had established itself in the Filipino. We will now go to the wartime films and its effect on Philippine films. The Pacific War brought havoc to the industry in 1941. The Japanese invasion put a halt to film activity when the invaders commandeered precious film equipment for their own propaganda needs. The Japanese brought their own films to show to Filipino audiences. The films the Japanese brought failed to appeal to audiences the same way the Hollywood-made movies or the locally made films did. Later on, Japanese propaganda offices hired several local filmmakers to make propaganda pictures for them. One of these filmmakers was Gerardo de Leon. The war years during the first half of the 1940s virtually halted filmmaking activities. Propaganda films came out which extolled the Filipino-Japanese friendship, such as The Dawn of Freedom made by director Abe Yutaka and associate director Gerardo de Leon. Less propagandistic was Tatlong Maria or Three Marias, directed in 1944 by Gerardo de Leon and written for the screen by Tsutomu Sawamura from Jose Esperanza Cruz's novel. Despite the distraction and hardships of the war, the people found time for entertainment, and when movies were not being made or imported, they turned to live theater, which provided alternative jobs for displaced movie folk. The war years may have been the darkest in film history.